Back for part two, with Coach Mark Klingsporn from Tartan. We're going to just dive right into X's and O's type stuff. So, Coach, practice planning. What do your practices look like?
Well, first of all, the most important word in any practice, I think, is tempo. Your practice tempo has to be, worked into whatever plan, whatever you're thinking about doing that day. Your tempo is the most important thing. I once heard Bobby Knight say this, and I think this is very true. I really do believe in this still to this day, that your practices have to be tougher in your games. So when you get to the games, they don't seem like such a big obstacle to overcome. So our practices are tough. The tempo, we go from one drill to the next. The expectations of what we're trying to do is really important. The kids' effort and attitude in regards to how they go through every drill and every rep that we do are really important. Communicating, the talk part of it, being important. Your enthusiasm for your teammates. How do you congratulate a teammate? Like, I'm sure a lot of coaches do this. Kid dives on the floor. We have an expectation. You dive on the floor for a ball. Like once in a while, I'll just take the ball and throw it on the floor, and the kids will all call loose and dive for the ball. And then our other expectation is the kids on the floor, you go pick them up. You pick your teammate up. So there's a lot of things that go into, your practices being important. Number one is tempo. Number two is your attitude about how you're going about your actual practice and how you're treating your teammates during the whole thing. The things that you want to get out of your team and see during the games, you got to see that in practices every day. So, I would say that our practices are very up-tempo. I would say that our practices are centered on, that team, that togetherness, that helping each other out. But I also think, like what we do within our practices kind of is dictated a little bit by our kids, right? People always say that we're a defensive-minded program. I don't think we're a defensive-minded program at all. I think we're a play-hard-minded program. And I think that results in kids, that's the first element to playing defense. You got to be able to play hard. So it looks like we're that way. Well, we actually spend a lot more time on offense than we do on defensive stuff. We do a lot of skill work in season based on the fact the type of kids that we're getting. A couple of years ago, I did a little research on this. We had one 8th grade team, and I think 10 kids. I think 7 of those 10 kids, or 6 or 7 of those 10 kids, came to Tartan. Eastridge had 5 8th grade teams and 48 kids playing traveling basketball. So a lot of times, what we deal with is kids that, whose parents couldn't afford to play traveling basketball or thought it had some negative connotation to it, that they're traveling all over the Midwest to play. So we have a lot of kids that don't play traveling basketball, but when they get to high school in 9th grade, the bell goes off, they can walk down the hallway and have their shoes on in 5 minutes and in the gym. You get a lot of kids that try out in 9th grade. We typically have, 35 to 50 kids that try out for 9th grade basketball. Along with that, we have kids that haven't probably got the proper skill work up until that point. Not only have they not played traveling, but they haven't been able to afford personal trainers to go to different camps and do skill work within those two things. So, we have some catching up to do with our kids skill-wise. So our practices have a lot of skill work, a lot of shooting and ball handling involved in it, a lot of individual footwork. And that's where that Bill Fetch takes care of that. So we'll always start out every practice with, some good individual work. And that's kind of dictated by the clientele, the personnel that we have. And we need to do that. Otherwise, we don't get enough of that. Even though you want your kids to be doing stuff in the off season, I think our kids do a pretty good job of that. We still feel like our kids are behind a little bit skill wise. So we have that element in our practice also. So I think your practices have to be built around, the type of kids you have, where the skill set is, what you want to get out of them. And I think that's design, your team design is that way too.
How long do you go, or what's the duration of your practices? Tryout week versus January versus playoffs are in 2 weeks.
Well, we're limited again. I mentioned that in the prior episode that our practice facilities are not great. game facility, we got a great one. But we're limited to a 2-hour block of practice every day, and we're going at it. We'll do some 2-a-days early in the year, especially during tryouts and stuff. But for us to get kids to show up in the morning is also a challenge too, because we don't have a lot of kids that have the ability to drive and get there, or parents get them up there in the morning. So we face that challenge a little bit too. So, we'll do 2 days. We'll do 2-a-days for tryouts. The first 2 days, Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, then we make our team. And then anytime that we have a day that's like an off school day, like an MLK or a President's Day or like Thanksgiving Friday or whatever, when we have a day, we'll go a longer block. We could go up to 3 hours. We could have up to 3 hours planned. But we may spend a half hour of that, shooting free throws, a chance for us to get in the gym and get in the gym by ourselves. The other thing we never do is we never get on our main floor. Rarely do we get on our main floor. We're always practicing on a side gymnasium. So, as the season goes on, so we take advantage of every opportunity we can to get in there a little bit longer. We do not go on Saturdays, but we do have a lot of Saturday activities as far as games and youth tournaments that we run as fundraisers and, morning JV, B squad game. So it seems like we have something going on almost every Saturday anyways. But we don't have regular Saturday practices. And as the season goes on, you taper. We all know that we do that a little bit as the season goes on. We may have the kids still in the gym for 2 hours, but it might be a little bit more of a walkthrough for an opponent. Might be, again, shooting more, getting more shots up. Might be, again, getting more free throws up. But we'll taper as the year goes on in regards to the intensity of the practice to try to get our kids' legs back a little bit as we approach section play.
Individual skills, small-sided games, 5-on-0, 5-on-5. How do you, or what is in a normal practice? How much time are you doing with some 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4 stuff versus 5-on-0 install versus 5-on-5?
Well, that's an old school thought, a whole part whole, right? So, you're kind of introducing your guys to here's what we're doing, right, with this. You kind of teach the whole part, the whole thing first, and then you break it down in parts. Whatever that means for whatever you're trying to teach, whether it's an offensive or defensive concept, you kind of break those parts down and you start bringing them back together. And some of those things will include those small-sided games at 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, some disadvantaged things, where you're going 5-on-4s. I heard somebody say they did 9-on-5. I forgot who that was. They said
it was Fadness, wasn't it? I think it was Fadness at Austin, wasn't it?
No, I don't think it was Fadness. I think it was
Omar at Richfield.
It was Omar, yes.
Yep.
Hey, by the way, that Omar McMillan guy is the most professional, greatest guys walking the face of the earth that you can possibly imagine. They were in our league. And then when they kind of left our league, we've been playing them in non-conference, first game of the year every year. And somebody says, well, why do you play those guys? And I said, because I love Omar and he does it the right way. And I've seen guys that, he'll have he had a couple rough seasons there where he won 3-4 games. And then I go watch a 20-win team, and I know that he was doing a better job of winning 3-4 games. So Omar did 9-on-5. I did that. We haven't gone quite that far with 9-on-5, but we've done 7-on-5. We'll call it 7-on-5. We'll call it chaos. Where we're just like, I think we've got as many as 8 in, but never 9. So I'm going to have to ask him how that goes. But we'll do, some advantage, disadvantage drills, and then kind of bring it all together. So, you're doing that the old school whole part whole thing. You always find things that you do as a coach through the years, that you like and you adapt. You change some things. I'm still using the still press offense that my high school coach taught me, because I think it's the best one I've ever seen. And if I don't need to change it, I'm not going to change it. Sometimes change to change is not good. You have to figure out what fits you as a coach. So, that's what a typical practice looks for us. We'll kind of break it down to some that do some 5-on-0 stuff, teach the whole thing, do some 5-on-0, break it down into individual drills, break it down to and kind of build it up there from 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and then eventually back to where you're at 5-on-5.
So you mentioned that you are a play hard-minded program, but everyone I talk to talks about how great of a defensive coach you are and how great of a defensive team that Tartan is year in and year out. So what is your defensive philosophy?
Well, we got five, there's 5 things that we think are important. And you have to have, these are 5 elements. I just asked my assistant coaches this question the other day, and we were kind of talking about it through text. 5 things that I think is important. First one is tough. You have to have a toughness mindset, right? A toughness mindset. And I think that does have to come from your head coach. I watch different head coaches, and, you can watch their team play and right away what that person is like, what the coach is like as a person. And what's important to him. So, I think that toughness mindset, and I think that's the one thing that I probably pass on to my guys. Just as a player myself, I had to be that way in order to play successfully. So that toughness mindset, I think defensively is number 1. Number 2 is ball pressure. I always say ball pressure is the doctor for everything on defense. It's our doctor. It's our medicine. I think ball pressure is so important. In the game of basketball, just making the other guy, the guy with the ball in his hand, feel uncomfortable. It's not stealing the ball from him. In fact, one of the things that we got to work on is we probably, foul a little too much. I heard Omar again say, what's the most important part of your element to your press? Don't foul, right? So I think we foul, a little too much for me. But, sometimes you have to give that, you have to give and take that a little bit. But we're really trying to, emphasize ball pressure. It's kind of funny in the summertime. We'll say that, we want you to ball pressure up at the expense of getting beat off the bounce, because we want our kids to get challenged and get better. So we say in the summer, you're going to ball pressure up at the expense of getting beat off the bounce, because we want kids to be challenged in their defensive stance. A few years ago, I had a coach who coached against them in a summer event, young guy in his first year, and he says, "Hey, coach, can I pick your mind after the game a little bit?" And I said, "Absolutely." So game's done, we play him, game's done, we sit down, find a place to talk in the corner, and he had played 2-3 zone the whole game. And he said, "Okay, tell me what you think." I said, "Well, how candid do you want me to be?" And he goes, "I want you to tell me exactly what you think." I said, "Okay, so why were you playing a 2-3 zone?" He goes, "Well, our kids, I just don't think they're going to be very good defensively." I said, "What better time to get them better is in the summertime. Get them up there and get them in their stance and get them to slide, get them to do some things, challenge those guys defensively." So ball pressure out of season is at the expense of giving up dribble penetration. In season, ball pressure is at the expense of not getting beat off of dribble penetration. So we're trying to make sure that we can ball pressure to the point that we don't get beat off the bounce and have to help on that. So ball pressure is number 2. Number 3 is, obviously our off ball positioning. There's 2 different ways you play defense, either on the ball or you're off the ball. And your positioning off the ball kind of takes care of a lot of the different things that you need to cover defensively, screening actions, just different actions that the team. And if you're in the right spot defensively, you're not going to be screened very easily. We had a guy named Eric Crawford, who's now a coach at UNI. I literally, best defensive player I've ever coached, but I think because he's so great defensively, his IQ was so high. He just was like almost unscreenable. And then Greg McDermott, who's now the coach at Creighton, I had told him that when he was recruiting him. He was the head coach at UNI at the time. I was down at a Creighton practice here about 4 or 5 years ago, and he says, "Hey, by the way, you were right about Crawford." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "I don't think that guy ever got screened playing for us either." So your positioning off the ball is so important to make sure you're in a proper help position, but not so much just the help part of it, but being able to defend actions and screens that are coming at you. The 4th element is talk. And I'm always looking for help on that, because I think it's one of the elements that all of us as coaches wish our kids would do more, is talk. So anybody out there that's got some great drills or great ideas on how you improve talk, I'm always looking to improve on that. But, we think talk's important. Obviously, you're engaged more, and then you're connected more. You're engaged more in your defensive play, and then you're connected with your teammates more when you're talking. And then the last thing you got to be able to do is finish the possession with a rebound. There isn't anything more disgusting than busting your tail defensively and, really giving great effort down in the stance, working hard. Shot goes up, and then some guy turns and looks at it, and as his guy runs off his shoulder and gets an offensive rebound. So, finishing that possession is important because it's a little deflating to a team defensively if you have to then you give up an offensive rebound and you got to line up and do it again. So I think it's a mindset too thing that you got to rebound the ball the right way. So, those are kind of the 5 things that we talk about. We're not going to try to fool you. Zone is a kind of a dirty 4-letter word in our program, and I don't mean to say that in a negative way. That just doesn't fit my personality and what we're trying to do with our kids. There's 2 different kinds of things that you can do as a program. You can either be a surprise and change program, or you can be a system program. And I think surprise and change is those teams that play. And I tell my kids this all the time. Somebody plays, 5, 6 different defenses. I say, guys, that just means they're not very good at any one of them. They're just trying to get you off balance offensively by changing defense. They're trying to get you off balance. So the most important things you do is identify, their changes in defenses. And when I scout, that's one of the things, that's the only thing I really scout defensively on the other team is, what's their base, how are they changing, when do they change, and how are they, what type of defense they're running. So like our day before in practice, we can kind of go through that, and some game prep the day before. But I kind of think that you need to be, you need to have something, that you kind of hang your hat on. And I'd rather be really good at one thing than kind of do 5, 6 things half-hearted. So it's that whole system versus surprise and change. And in high school basketball, I think you can still do that. I think offense is dictated by talent. I think defense is dictated by, your character as a coach. So I think those things are important. The other thing I was going to mention about it is that we're a team, sometimes people think that we're a team that presses a lot. We don't press a lot. I think you're not going to beat teams that are really good by pressing. You may beat some teams that are average to below average teams because you can turn them over. But in the long run, you're not going to turn teams over that are good teams. And I always say that we want to win at every level. I want to win, when my talent is better than your talent, we better win 100% of those games. Otherwise, they need to replace me. If my talent's the same as yours, I want to win 90 to 95% of those games because we're performing better. And if your talent's better than mine, I still want to win about 40 to 50% of those games because, again, our togetherness and the way we play together is going to outperform your individual talent. So, defensively, I think if in high school, if you're playing at a good 4A level, you're not just going to turn people over. So we do press, though, but we press with these 3 things in mind. At times we'll press. One, I always say we got to cut off the snake head. That's the point guard. We're going to try to make it tough on your point guard. Years ago, the first year we went to the state tournament in 1998, they had a guy named Mike Bauer that most of us remember, played for the University of Minnesota. They won our conference. Hastings won our conference. And they beat us in overtime, and they beat us by 1. So they basically beat us by 2 possessions. I told our guys, we only have to clean up 2 possessions and we'll beat these guys. Played them in the section finals and won by 18. The media guy asked me afterwards, like, God, so-and-so did a great job covering Bauer. And I said, and then I brought up my point guard. I said, yeah, Rob Foster covered the crap out of him. And he said, Rob Foster never covered him. He's your point guard. I go, yeah, he's the reason why we won the game because he could apply so much ball pressure in a full court setting. We kind of cut off their snake head. And then, so it kind of leads into the second thing we're trying to do, and that's disrupt offensive timing. I think that's so important. If you watch college basketball, and they press, they're just trying to take time off the shot clock is all they're trying to do. They're trying to limit 1 or 2 more ball reversals and take time off the shot clock. In high school basketball, for us, it's disrupt offensive timing. We're just going to make you feel comfortable with the timing. We're going to make you catch the ball out a little bit further than you want, which makes a post entry or any kind of a penetrating pass a little bit longer, which makes it easier for our guys on the backside to respond to that. So we're trying to disrupt offensive timing, and we're up. The third part of that is we're also trying to wear opponents out, wear opponents down mentally by pressing a little bit. So, we don't press necessarily to turn people over. I'm going to pick on Hastings a little bit. Again, they kind of re-entered our conference, and Coach Fike down at Hastings is a phenomenal coach. And he runs a ton of set stuff. When they came back into our league, he had 4 kids that were 3-year starters, and they were good. And the first time we played them, I made this huge coaching mistake in that we were going to have all their sets down, and we were going to work all on them. And we spent so much time on that stuff that it was just too much. And we ended up losing by 1 on an end out of bounds play with 15 seconds left. So the second time we played them, we just said, the heck with that. We're going full court man, and we're going to be disruptive as we can and try to take away their offensive timing. We're not going to be able to defend all their sets, but we're going to try to disrupt as many as we can. We end up winning the game by 25. So, certain teams will press up on, and the biggest reason we do that is to disrupt timing. So those are kind of things that we look for in our defensive play, and then some things that we do with our full court stuff.
Great stuff. I have a ton of notes written down. We're a press team too, so I like those, simplifying that in 3 bullet points, and then also your defensive 5. That's really good stuff. So for any coach, you might want to hit rewind and write those down. Coach Klingsporn has been doing this for a long time, and he's as good of a defensive coach as there is. I think you hit a really important point, and we'll talk offense here in a few minutes, but teams, and we say that to our guys too, if team's going to run 4 different defenses, that's because like you said, they're not very good at any of them. And I'm sure that coach tells run 2-3 zone in the summer. We've never been a zone team, but for any coach from, I've done this for 7 years, way less than you have. My advice, if you want to be a zone team, you got to be really good at man-to-man defense. Because if you're running zone to hide your guys, you're going to be a bad zone team too. It's the teams like Cambridge, who we say, who have Coach Ballman, Coach McDonald, who are great, right? They've won hundreds of games combined. Coach for, 50, 60 years together. Now Coach Ballman, I know, is stepping down his assistant role. They run matchup zone, but they could run a good man defense. They just run matchup zone because that's their style, and I think that's a huge thing. I also like the disrupting opponents, that second bullet point you mentioned on the press, and that's what we're trying to do. Where we've gotten into trouble as a press program, and we don't play as good of a teams that we don't play Eastridge and Cretin-Derham Halls during the season like you guys see. We play good teams, but our deal is we want teams to force ideally a quick mid-range jump shot, and that's where we have a lot of success. That team, speed them up. They shoot a crappy shot early, then we go back and run the other way. Where we get into trouble is our guys want to steal everything, right? So now you're jumping a pass. Now you're going back 5-on-4, and when you're seeing the scholarship level kids like you guys see day in and day out, or night in and night out in your league and in your section, you're going to get torched by that. So I thought those were 2 really cool or really beneficial things that I wrote down. Last thing here, or I get 2 more things defensively, because a question just came in on social media here. But first, how do you rep your defense? I know you talked 4-man shell at the end of part 1. How do you rep your defense and really being so detail-based while also keeping your players engaged?
Well, it's first of all how you break it down in practice. We try to do these things daily, right? We try to do some type of defensive footwork drill. Get your kid in the stance and, work on something. And it could be, a foot fire drill. It could be, just some shuffle drills. It could be an angle that you're taking from a wing drive, but could just be some one-on-one from different spots. It could be an advantage, disadvantage thing we give to the offensive player, but you got to do something with your defensive footwork every day. Second thing is we're going to defend some type of action, minimum some type of an action once a day, and usually it's more than that. Early in the season, it's more than that. So we're defending, all the different actions and all the different screens that we're going to face. Not many people do this anymore, but a post-to-post cross screen, down screen, right? That little triangle look. How do you defend that? A flex, how do you defend that? A staggered baseline, how do you defend that? A staggered down from the top, how you defend it, how you defend an elevator screen. All those different things need to be defended in actions, like a back cut action, how you defend in a back cut action. So there's lots of different things that you need to do. So we're defending actions and screen situations is the next part of our practice. So it's defensive footwork, actions, And screen situation is number 2. Number 3 is we'll do some type of shell work. And usually that shell work that day involves those actions or those screens that we just worked on. So that's the third part, putting those actions and screens in the shell work, which is 3. Number four is try to get some kids to do an advantage, disadvantage. Like we might do a 5-on-4 defensive drill. We might do a 4-on-4 transition where, where we're putting the transition defenders at a disadvantage. Everybody kind of does that drill, or drill similar to that. We're trying to put them into some type of 5-on-4, 4-on-4 change where we drop the ball and everybody's got to go rotate to a new guy. So we're trying to do some disadvantage things for the defense. Then we're always throwing in a defensive rebounding drill. That's part of a daily thing, a defensive rebounding drill. And then obviously 5-on-5 play where we make them somehow competitive at a half-court setting. So kind of break it down, that way. I think you have to make sure that you have all those elements in your practice and built into your practice somehow.
Awesome. And the last defensive question, ball screen D. A lot of teams are running either the Euro ball screen continuity or they're running high spread ball screen type stuff. So I'm sure that fits into one of your actions that you break down in practice. What is your ball screen defense philosophy?
Well, our ball screen defensive philosophy is that, first of all, you better work on it because everybody's using it now. 10 years ago, we didn't have to work on it very much. Now it's probably our most prevalent screen action that we have to cover, is a ball screen. So you better put time and invest time into working on it. And then you have to have, I think, different ways to defend a ball screen. And it has to fit not only your kids, but it has to fit your opponent, because we may play one opponent that does not shoot behind a ball screen. So we'll go 2 under. And then we'll play another opponent that maybe, maybe not as good to handle the ball, where we might trap it. Some people call it blitz it, I guess. We call it something else. And then within a game, you might change that. And within the game, you may be trapping one guy and going 2 under on another guy. So I think it's dictated by your opponent too a little bit, but you have to have different ways to defend ball screens. So we've got, like probably most everybody has got some kind of a trap in on it. We prefer to be aggressive and trap, but again, that kind of goes back into that full court philosophy. You're just not going to turn good players over. We're not going to trap Trey Holloman from Creighton and turn him over. He's too good with the ball. We're going to play him a different way, but we're not going to trap him. There's, that's kind of dictated by personnel too. So, we'll trap. A lot of people like to ice it and send it towards the baseline. Obviously, we don't do that one. I think that's a little too complicated for kids. We'll flat call it, where we, where the guy covering the screener is responsible for the drive, and the guy getting screens responsible for coming over and challenging the shot. So we'll flat call that, which seems to be a common way that a lot of people are playing in. It's a pretty effective way. We added something in last year where we just 1-undered it, where the guy that was screening just jumped way off his guy, and we allowed that guy to go 1 under, whether 2 under. And sometimes we'll go 2 under, where we chest up on the screener with the guy covering the screener, and our guy will go underneath both players. So we usually do, and we'll switch it sometimes too. Sometimes we'll, if we have a team that's capable of doing that, or 2 players that are capable of doing that, we'll switch. A few years ago, we played Henry Sibley when Tom Dasovich was coaching there, and they had Mike Bruschwitz and Halverson, and they also had Jake Cruiser. They looked like an airport, a college team coming into the gymnasium. They were so big. Our biggest kid was 6'3". This was my son's junior year. I had Mark Sonnen on that team too, who now played at UNI, now coaches there. Our biggest kids we had was 6'3". And they played us during the season. They high-loaded us. We had no chance. We literally had no chance. And we tried about every possible thing we could to defend a high-low. And we've got about 3-4 different things we can do with that. But not many teams do that anymore, so we don't have to practice it that much. We couldn't defend it. Well, then during section play, they went to ball screen stuff. and he wanted the ball. And I get what Tom was doing. He wanted the ball in his two best players' hands. So they were doing ball screens with Bruschwitz and Halverson, but we just switched them because we had our 2 6'3" kids, our two best defenders that were 6'3" on those guys, and we just switched everyone. So they never got anything out of their ball screen action. We ended up it was like a minute left in the game. The score was 33-32 in a section championship game. So we put ourselves in a position to win. Because that was the best thing to do against those guys and what they were doing at the time. So you have to, your scouting report will kind of dictate a little bit what you're doing with your ball screen action too. But you better practice it, you better rep it, and you better have different ways of playing.
What I like hearing from you as someone that's done this a long way, or done this a long time, is that you're willing to change things up within a season. And I think sometimes young coaches, coaches have been there for 10, 12 years, veteran coaches get really stuck in doing things a certain way. And I just love hearing the adjustments that you've made over the course of a career, but also the course of a season against the same team, from switching ball screens to 2-under to blitzing. I would agree too that I think icing is really tough at the high school level.
Yep. We
do a lot of high ball screen stuff. And when teams try to ice, I just kind of smirk. It's like, there's no way you're running this like the 1990 or 2014 Chicago Bulls. You don't have the personnel to do that. And so I think that's a challenging coverage to run at the defensive level or the high school level. Sorry.
Well, it's hard to ice a ball screen when it's up front.
Yep.
It's easier to do those things when they're like a side ball continuity. But boy, those ones up front, I that's why I don't do it, is because I don't want my kids to be confused about the difference between playing it up front with a high ball screen versus a side ball screen.
For sure. We'll get into offense here. I know you talked about your assistant coach runs the offense. And so what was that system that he wanted to put in? And then I know you give your guys a lot of freedom. So talk about both of those things.
Well, first of all, I'll talk about the freedom part. Again, a lot of people will say, that we're a defensive-minded team. But I think your skill set is what dictates how good you are offensively. So those are things that need to be done both in season and out of season to improve your kids' skill sets, right? I was a pretty dang good offensive coach when I had Jake Sullivan playing for me, right? When we needed a basket, he would get the ball at the point guard. We'd run a red call, and it was pretty simple. We'd throw the ball to the wing, come off a UCLA screen, and sit in the post. We'd throw it into him. He'd turn and score. Best post offensive player I've ever had, Jake Sullivan, my guard. So, I turn and go like, God, I can coach the hell out of this game, can't I? So, obviously your players are going to make you a better offensive team. So I do think there's a difference between what you can do offensively and defensively. So I think number one, offensively, you need to have, be working on that skill set to get that better. And then, I try to empower those guys. I always tell my kids, I'll point to the offensive half and I go, you guys got that half. And I'll point to the defensive half and I'll say, I got this half. But if you don't play this half on my end, you're not going to get to play on that end. I'm not going to say a whole lot during a game about shot selection and, and offensive stuff. Try to empower the kids to be good offensive players. When the shot goes up, I want it to go in just like they do, right? How many times have we said, no, good shot, right?
Right.
So we want the ball to always go into baskets. So you try to keep your mouth shut a little bit about that and empower the kids. But I always say I got the defensive half, the last 30 seconds of the first half, and the last 3 minutes of the game. Those are mine. I'm going to kind of control that on offense a little bit, depending upon score and situation and stuff like that. So, got to take care of, but at the same time, you're not allowing your kids just to run crazy and take crazy shots. Anybody that says they're empowering their kids to play loose and they want them to know that they're just going to be allowed to play with the freedom that they want to play with, they're just fooling themselves, because in the long run, they're not going to beat a good defensive team. They're just not going to beat a good defensive team. You have to still teach kids good shot, bad shot, like Omar said. And that gets taken care of two places. Number one, it gets taken care of in practice. And number two, it gets taken care of in film sessions. Number three, we don't try to take care of it in games. We may have to say something in a game. We may have to take a kid out and say, hey, you need to back off on this just a little bit. Let the game come to you a little bit more. You're pressing too much. But we try not to say too much. So we try to empower our guys offensively. And I always get a kick out of people again saying we're a defensive-minded team when we hold our conference scoring record 113 points in a game, and we had the second all-time leading now scorer in 4A large school basketball, I should say, in the history of large school basketball. So I always tell kids, if you can do something, I'm going to get out of the way. I know Jake Sullivan taught me a lot about basketball. Sometimes he told me being a good coach, know when to shut up and get the hell out of the way. So but that's kind of what we're doing with our offensive part, and what we're trying to get done with that, and empowering the kids. And the second part of the question you said was the offense that we now run. The offense we now run is it's a 5-out motion, and it's got elements of regular 5-out motion going way back to the old school days. It's got elements of the read and react to it. The read and react is 5-out motion. That's all that is. Guys, do you see this read and react offense? Well, we've probably been doing that for quite a while. We've been running some kind of a motion offense, right? Because you are reading what the defense is doing to you and then reacting to what they're doing to you. So, some guy threw a fancy name onto it, but we run a 5-out open look that I really like. And what I really like about it is it does two things. It gives kids actions that they're supposed to run that based on what we call, but at the same time gives them an opportunity to read what a defensive player is doing. An example would be is if we're running curl cuts, right? We're screening to run curl cuts. Well, if they jump the top side of the curl, the defender jumps the top side of the curl cut, our guy can still back cut that. He's still reading and reacting to what they're doing. So what we got is kind of a way that we can kind of control a little bit about how our opponent is defending us by calling out calling out actions, but at the same time teaching kids how to read how defenders are playing, a certain action. So we may say, hey, we're in 7s right now, and I won't say what that is. And then if they defend it a certain way, hey, next time down we're going to run a 73. And a 7 will kind of say, okay, they're defending this action this way, but then after two 7s, we'll run 3s the rest of the time. So we usually catch somebody on the 3 call, usually on the first or second repetition. So it's kind of a counter that we do, and we're able to call it on the fly to our kids. And there are 9 different actions that we do that we call out that all involve screens and cuts. So we really like it because it gives the kids freedom on offense, gives them a chance to not only, we're kind of dictating a little bit what they're doing so they're not standing and watching. Because one of the biggest things a problem we have with now with this ball screen offense is a lot of guys stand. You got 2 guys involved in the play and the other guy's spacing up on backside, or you get a lot of guys that stand. The other thing that we have a problem with in today's game, I think, is a lot of 1-on-5 play. And I'm not saying 1-on-1 play. 1-on-1 play, we encourage. In fact, that's part of what we're doing with our new offense: advantage, disadvantage. When we catch the ball, we're trying to get our kids to read closeouts. Is it too high, too low? Is he too late? Is he high on his closeout? So we're looking at advantage, disadvantage, and who do you got on you? This guy you can beat? That type of stuff. So. But a lot of time teams are playing 1-on-5 where they're getting into multiple dribbles, and that's just so easy to defend. And then you get kids that stand and watch too much. So I think the 2 biggest problems we have offensively in today's games are kids standing and watching. We're trying to get those kids to do a better job and not stand and watch. And the second part of it is, kids just not knowing enough actions to do. How do I get myself open? How do I read this screen? How do I play if this guy's doing this to me? Like, how do I get myself open for a shot? So this offense that we run, I really like it. Eric Bronow, my assistant, brought it to me. We just call it open. Everybody knows we call it open, and all that really means is a 5-out motion. So.
Coach, that's great stuff. I mean, this is the best type of interview I've noticed. I haven't done a lot of this, and I'm not a journalistic major by any means. I'm a history guy, but being able to just ask you a question, just let you go with it. I mean, you have a ton of knowledge, and I mean, this is anyone listening, maybe only listen to part 2. Make sure you listen to part 1. Coach is awesome, and I know Coach is extremely accessible. Like I said at the open of part 1, first time I met Coach was up in Grand Rapids. He was running the breakdown event. I was a brand new head coach, and I just started BSing with him, and I learned a ton. And we've bumped every time I bump into you, if it's at state tournament or coaches association, I always feel like we have a good conversation. So Coach is someone you can reach out to, who's open to share, and just really appreciate you coming on, Coach. I have pages worth of notes I've been writing here. Hopefully it didn't get picked up in my microphone. Stay safe. Best of luck to you guys. Hopefully we're able to get some sort of summer workout in, but time will tell with that. But, stay safe, and best of luck to you guys next season.
Hey, thanks for doing this, Coach. I really enjoy listening to the other coaches as well. And, again, always get like one nugget from every guy you typically listen to, one thing that you get. And if you're getting one thing from somebody in watching a practice or listening to them talk, then you're pretty successful with it. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.